you tell if you need to rebuild your 915 transmission?
To tell if you want to rebuild your 915 transmission would be a couple of different variances. Oil leaks would be one. The transmission may still shift normally but is leaking oil from gaskets or seals. The side seals on the differential can be replaced with the transaxle in place without disassembling it, but anything else would require disassembly. The next issue would be shifting. So if I was shifting, say, from first to second and I was hearing that telltale grinding sound, that would be another reason why I'd want to rebuild my transmission. The final thing would be bearing noises coming from the transmission. So when I'm driving down the road and in either a particular gear or at a particular speed, I'm getting a noise, either a bearing noise or a gear noise.
Does the type of oil that you put into your transmission matter?
Transmission oils can matter greatly and do differ greatly. Different weights will result in different shift fields, different specifications like GL4 versus GL5, for example. GL5 oils have a conditioning agent and they are typically used with limited slip differentials just so those plates don't chatter. But the weight of the oil will play a large part to how the transmission shifts. If you use a very heavyweight oil and you're in a cold climate, often you can have shifting problems in cold mornings when you're trying to drive the car. The gear oil will be thick and it'll be hard to engage. If your transmission oil is too thin, sometimes it cannot provide enough lubrication to protect the bearings and the gears. I've also found over the years a lot of the time using different types of fluid can solve some minor problems that are just a result from oil breakdown. One of my favorite oils for a long time was the Staylube 80W90 GL5 spec, and that had really good results in all of the Porsche transaxles.
What parts do you always replace?
Usually when I'm going into a transmission, I will almost always replace all the synchro bands out of just time to do them. It's such a big job to get in here and do it. Everything else is based on inspection. Bearings don't necessarily need to be changed each time, just depends on how many miles they've got on it, what your intended use for the transmission, if you're going to sell the car, if you're going to keep the car. There's just a lot of other things to come into consideration.
Can you do the work without the special tools?
For the most part, you cannot do the work without the special tools. You can get away with some of it, but it's not going to allow you to safely disassemble gear shafts without damaging gears if you don't have, say, the holding fixture to hold the input shaft while you're doing up and undoing that large nut. Setting up the differential without the differential tools is going to be extremely hard. You can get close using Prussian blue, but it'll never be exact.
What is the difference between an aluminum or a magnesium 915 transmission case?
The early 915s used magnesium transaxle cases, same as the 901, 911s. They also used a magnesium transaxle case. The advantage of this is, from a weight standpoint, magnesium is significantly lighter than that of aluminum. The downside is the aluminum is a lot more stable and a lot stronger material. So, for example, the main bearings that support the pinion shaft in the main differential housing, the magnesium cases are more prone to that bearing spinning and moving, causing an excessive amount of wear. The same with the differential side cover as well. That's another weak area when using the original magnesium cases. The aluminum cases are just a lot more stable. They can handle the pressures a lot better, but you do sacrifice in that they are significantly heavier.
Is there a difference in how you treat them for cleaning?
So when I'm cleaning an aluminum case, I have no issues putting it in my vapor blast machine and then tumbling it afterwards. The aluminum doesn't come from the factory with any protected finish on it, whereas magnesium cases are more susceptible to corrosion, so they're typically treated with a Dow finish at the factory. If you vapor blast or bead blast or use an abrasive cleaner on magnesium, it will actually take that coating off the transaxle, which case once it goes back into service, it'll look really good the first time, but as soon as it's exposed to the elements, it's going to corrode and going to suffer a lot more damage much quicker than aluminum, unless you treat it with something.
What are some good driving habits or some bad ones that will have an effect on a 915 transmission?
So the 915 and the 901, 911 transmissions, the synchro bands in these transmissions are fairly unique. There's not many vehicle manufacturers that use this style of synchro. They tend to be a little bit slower when engaging, so if you're used to driving a transmission that uses brass synchro rings, like most Japanese transmissions or American transmissions, then you can pretty much slam those in and out of gear very quickly. With all of the Porsche shifts from pretty much 356, 911 all the way up to 1986 that use this synchro band, you do need to feel that gear shift as you engage. It's a slower engagement. You can shift fast, but you just have to be very positive about it. One of the worst things that you can do while driving that will wear out a transmission is to rest your hand on the gear shift when you are not shifting. This will place load on shift forks and sliders and will just accelerate wear in the transaxle.
How long would you expect a rebuilt transmission to last?
The rebuilt transmission's life is going to vary depending on what's being done, how many parts were replaced, and why they were replaced. The driver is also going to have a large influence on how long a transaxle is going to stay in service. Someone that can feel the shift and can shift very smoothly without placing a lot of wear on synchros, a transmission is actually going to last a lot longer for those kinds of drivers. Also, regular maintenance, changing the oil every 25,000 miles in the transmission, is also going to extend the life of bearings and other components in the transaxle. Just because all of the bearing dust and synchro dust, which is normal, will come out with the oil, and then fresh oil replacing it will remove those abrasives from floating around your transmission.